half the wines we're supposed to have.
Meeting being
I'm
live streamed.
Okay.
So this is recording it for those people who want to join who can't make it tonight. And then I've just got to mute it because last time when we tried this, I sort of had myself speaking with about a 10-second.
Okay, I think we're all still able to talk. Hi, Gary.
Hello, how are you?
I don't even know how to
you.
mute.
Hi, Patricia.
Hi.
Nice to hear, but hello, Mark.
Hello, Ag.
Ooh, that looks like a nice party. Candles. Where's that?
Okay. Can you hear me, Rita?
I can, yes.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So we're live on YouTube. Okay, so look, everybody. I have to say, I could almost wish that we were back in lockdown and doing this every Friday night like we did before. But that's you know, there are swings and roundabouts. We're going to. I just whilst everybody, what I think we want to do. This is a more interactive than normal because we got Nessa and where's Toit? I can't see Toit on my screen. Oh, there's Toit. Me there, Toit. Shout if you can.
Hi there, Mark. Hi there.
Hey, there you go. I can see you. I can see you. Go on, yeah. So, and Nessa, you're still muted. So if you could unmute yourself, that would be good. So whilst everybody, so I'd like to do this. This is going to be a new world, old world tasting, and it's going to be fun. It'd be nice to have Toit and Nessa talking about their wines and the differences. And whilst we're all getting, so I've got a glass of both whites ready because I like to do when I'm doing a comparative tasting. I like to have a little sip of one, little sip of another, sip one, and go back. So I'm going to ask you to do the same for the whites and the reds. I'm going to mute everybody and then unmute Nessa, Toit, me, and Rita. And I'm afraid. Sadly, we don't have Rachel here tonight. Rachel has had the audacity to go on holiday and be somewhere in Greece rather than helping us out. So Rita's going to do the chat. And so if there's any sort of questions you want to ask, we'll try and sort of look those on the chat. And I'm going to mute everybody now and then unmute the ones who, if I can see them now, hang on a second, do bear with me because it's been such a long time. Right, Nessa, you can unmute, please. And Toit, you can unmute, please. And Rita, you can unmute, please. And we are just, whilst we're just pouring the wines, having a little sip, I just want to play, because Nessa's, you got your 3-minute video of your, oh God, there you go, your 3-minute, hang on. This is all very, am I going to be able to do this is the question. Just bear with. Oh yeah, I will. I'll do it. Don't worry. I'll do it. There we go. I'll do that, and then I go back to this, and I go back to this, and I go back to my. There we go. That. Share the sound, and try and play that. How about that? Skip the ads. Put the sound on. Hear that?
No.
Hear it?
No. Looks like we can't hear anything.
That's me.
Okay, a lot of silence.
I can hear you.
Yes.
It's going very well.
Oh dear. I'll tell you what. I might quit that one.
Oh dear.
I might do that went well, didn't it?
That did very well, Mark. Okay, so moving on.
Anyway, moving on. Look, here we are. We've got a Friday night. We got a sort of new world, old world. What I can do is I can share if I can share my screen and my maps. How about that? Can you see that map? How about that? So there you go. So back to where we started off. Having a drink. Excuse me. Nessa, I first tasted your wines at the Vignes Sud tasting, and I think it was, I can't remember it now, I think it was the Paris one. And
Paris, yeah.
It was Paris, and having said that, we bought lots of your wines and we've shipped it and we love them all. And that was the last time we managed to go abroad since the COVID lockdown, which was a real shame. But it was in one of those rooms like that. In fact, it was in that room where I went up and down, several hundred bottles of wine, and I just pick out 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 bottles which really shout at me, and 1 or 2 of them were yours. And on that basis, I went to visit your stand and tasted the wines and actually loved all of them. So thank you for letting me experience your wines, and they've been very, very popular. And you've done a tasting with us before, and we've tasted a couple of your wines before. We have actually, half of us tasted the Cote, the red wine, because we had more participants than we had wine last time. We would have had your Viognier tonight had we not sold out of it. So we got an alternative, but we still want to do the alternative tasting. And basically, I've done a lot of old world, new world tastings. When I was doing all my studies for the Master of Wine and all the exams that I was doing, all the blind tastings were, what's the difference between new world, old world? And I'm hoping, Rita, can everybody see that map? Am I sharing my screen?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Can I interrupt and just say, has anybody had a slurp of wine yet?
Everybody should be drinking wine as we go along. Good, because I'm certainly not holding back. And when we get to the serious bit, we'll be backwards and forwards.
Okay.
So what is called New World, Old World? On this map here, the Old World is basically Europe, and there's that little bit of green down there, which I think is obviously Lebanon, which somehow seems to sort of crept into. I wouldn't have called that a classic old world wine growing region, but it might be where the grapes started growing. And all the bits in purple are what we call the New World. So you've got the California, you've got Chile, Argentina, South Africa, and Australia, and off my screen a bit of New Zealand. So and what we'll come back to is you've got these sort of lines of, I'm never quite sure if it's longitude or latitude, but it's the north versus south and how far away you are from the equator. So if you look at European vineyards, they're sort of between 50 and 35 or something like that, and then down in sort of Chile, Australia, and South Africa, they're down in the 30s. So there's quite a bit of difference, and this has an effect on your wine. If you look at a wine map of France, you've got up in the north in Champagne. So Champagne is 49 degrees north of the equator, and down where you are, Nessa, you're 43 degrees south. So there's a 43. So there's a 6-degree difference. And if you think about that 6-degree difference, you're making lovely rich wines and all sorts of lovely rich wines, fine wines. As the further north you go, the cooler it gets. But when you go up to Champagne, only sort of 6 degrees further north, you're strange enough, they don't make any still wine. They only make sparkling wine, because you need cold climate, and you need sort of the wines to be much more acidic. So you can make sparkling wine, which is a bit like why here in the UK or England and Wales, I'm not even sure, I've got to admit, are there any viable vineyards in Scotland? But in England and Wales, in my opinion, we make good sparkling wines, but we don't make good still wines. Surprise, surprise, in Champagne, they make really good sparkling wines, but not still wines. And then you've got all of the different regions. We're down to Saint-Chinian, so where I'm spring, that's where you are. You're down there, 43 degrees north of the equator. And then we come to you, and we're in Pal. We're there, and you've got the whole of the sort of the Western Cape, and you're there. You're near Stellenbosch. You've got Franschhoek, but you've got other regions there. You've got the Swartland, the Klein Karoo, Elgin, and I guess we'll be asking you, well, what's the difference in wine production terms between where you are and these other areas? What makes some Ridgeback that much different to those? I just always like to put a picture of the first time I ever tasted Viognier, and that's that's the up in just south of Lyon, the Northern Rhone, the Condrieu vineyards. And so Condrieu is one of the smallest Appellation contrôlée in France, where they grow Viognier. And Viognier, and this is what we're tasting first of all. When back in the early 80s, when I was first in the wine trade, I think I'm guessing there was only 100 or 200 hectares of Viognier grown, and that might be I might be wildly out about that now, but such is the popularity of the Viognier. It's gone further and further south, and it's headed south down through the Rhone Valley down to the Languedoc, and some fantastic Viogniers are grown, and then it's spread around the world. And I think there are hundreds of thousands of hectares of Viognier grown around the world now. So that is where we're going to start. And so what I'd like to do is, Nessa, as I said, we sold out of your Viognier, so we couldn't use it in this tasting. We haven't managed to ship between now and then. But so let's everybody have a slurp of the Domaine Saint-Roch Viognier, and it gives you a good idea of what sort of Viognier is like. So please, I'm inclined to ask everybody to unmute, because I do like to have a group slurp at the beginning of the tasting. So if you could all unmute yourselves.
He likes to hear us.
Have a good old mouthful of Viognier and a sloosh around. That would be good fun.
Very nice.
Oh, that's not. Gorgeous.
Oh, there goes Mark.
Well, I like a slurp, and of course I still manage to embarrass many people, because I do this in restaurants. I do this at home dinner. I just find I get added value out of slurping, because you just get more flavour coming through, and it sounds disgusting, but that's tough, because if you're just enjoying the wine.
Have you ever been thrown out of a restaurant, Mark?
No, not for slurping. I have
Not
been thrown
for
out
drinking wine. Maybe other reasons it's been thrown out.
Yes, out of consideration to your fellow guests.
We'll need to know that.
Okay, I'm going to mute everybody again now, and now unmute our guests. Hang on a second. Right, if I can find. Sorry, I've got to scroll down here. Find Nessa. There you go, Nessa. Please unmute yourself. Toit, please unmute yourself. Rita, please unmute yourself. So if there's any, please do. And if there's any questions, but just to make it easier for volume, just to if there are any questions you want to ask, just put it on the chat, and we'll try and get round to them. So Nessa, can we start with you, if you're there? Thank you so much for joining us again. Just so as we know, we did send samples of the South African wines to Nessa and samples of the French wines to Toit. The ones to Toit got there in 2 days without any hassle. The ones to Nessa never made it at all, despite having spent €120, plus in addition to the transport costs on trying to get them through UPS in France and all sorts of problems. Anyway, so I do apologise about that, Nessa. So you're
not to worry. We can just imagine how wonderful the South African Viognier is. I'm sure it'll turn up one day.
I tell you, it'll turn up. And I tell you, if it turns up in the next year or two, we'll repeat the tasting and don't try and. Anyway, what I want to say first of all,
the invitation this evening.
Before we start. We're comparing wines. There is absolutely no right and wrong. These are wines that are different. They are all absolutely delicious. All 4 wines tonight, in my opinion, are crackingly good wines, but they are different. So you may choose to like one more than another or the other. That doesn't really matter. What the point is why are they different and how are they different? So Nessa, tell us about Viognier grown in your vineyards. How does it work?
Yeah, Viognier, as you said, nearly disappeared after the Second World War. There were a couple of tens of hectares, I believe, around the country area. The reason being, and principally, because it's absolute pain in the ass to grow. Very small berries, quite fickle. So it doesn't like certain soils, and it also produces quite low yields. And Toit can maybe give his view on how it does in South Africa, but definitely in our part of the world, it is a grape that is quite difficult to grow. And there's also very, very tiny berries. So it's a high percentage of juice to skin ratio. And because all the flavor comes from the skins, of course, this is why you get such a wonderful perfume and aromatics on the nose. It's why Viognier is as perfumed and opulent and exciting on the nose as it is, because of these tiny, tiny berries. But of course, as a winemaker, that's a challenge because you get less juice per vine. That is how it is.
Is it much different to, let's say, a Sauvignon Blanc or a Chardonnay? How much?
Yeah,
different?
I mean, there's a difference inherently in, the same yield will give maybe 10% less juice, but also if you push the yields higher, we have found, whereas in a Sauvignon Blanc, that will be perfectly fine. In some cases, you'll make a better wine, a more elegant, more lifted, more fresh wine. With Viognier, if you push the yields higher, i.e. try and grow a lot of grapes per vine, it loses all its inherent beauty and character. So Viognier has to be grown on, in our experience, poorer soils. The yields need to be kept in check in order to keep this gorgeous aromatics and perfume and typical fruits that you're getting there. So the peaches and the stone fruits and the floral aspects that are so wonderful about Viognier really only come from vines that have been kept restricted in terms of yields.
So for me, the Domaine Saint-Roch Viognier is a wine is a Jeff Carroll wine, but it comes from down in your neck of the woods. So sure. It's not the same as your wines. I've got to say, I think your wines are a bit more elegant than this one. But this one, what it does, it packs all those flavors you said. To me, a classic Viognier has got apricots and peaches, and it's got that sort of oiliness. And so you reckon that comes from the skins? So you do leave the skins on during the fermentation at all before?
Personally, we do not, no, because we want to create a Viognier that has those aromatics qualities, but also a lot of freshness. So we actually harvest our Viognier all at night time, keeping the fruit in really good condition, keeping it really fresh. And then we just take the first press. So we take the free run juice in the first press, and we take the skins away pretty quickly to avoid the wine becoming too heavy and too rich. It's very easy with Viognier to get high alcohols, and it's very easy with Viognier to make a wine that's very ripe and rich and round. So it's about, as always, creating a balance, keeping those gorgeous, opulent flavors, but also keeping some nice fresh acidity in the wine too, to balance it up. But some people will, macerate on the skins a little bit. And Viognier will definitely give you that oiliness and that heaviness if that's the style that you're looking for.
I do love a Viognier, and I tell you, Toit, can you come in here and tell us, because I do want to go and sip between the two. Tell us, is it the same for you? Do you have lower yields on Viognier?
Mark, hi there to everybody, and hi Ness. Nice to taste your wines and listen to your story as well. It's interesting. I just from our side, I think I echo absolutely what you're saying. For us, it's also a very fickle cultivar, and the area in which we are growing our grapes is a very warm part of South Africa. I mean, we're looking at average maximum summer temperatures of between 30 to 35. So we need a something delicate like a Sauvignon Blanc, for example, you tend to lose those delicate flavors in these conditions. But something like the Viognier absolutely thrives, with the thicker skins. It's a bit more resilient, and we actually we really find it sort of benefits you. We don't want any sunburn at all, but I love those sort of sun-kissed berries. They tend to bring out that richness, which for me again is nice. We're trying to sort of tone down on the aromatics a little bit. We find it can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming, and then do a lot of work on the mouthfeel and the structure of the wine, especially when once you've sort of sipped and slurped and swallowed, you want that sort of linger on the top of your palate. So, but absolutely echo what Nessa's saying about the yield. We've also done experiments where we sort of lift the yield a little bit, and it definitely dilutes your flavors. And just the interesting thing as well is your picking date. And the amount that the flavor profile of Viognier changes within a space of 3 or 4 days, where it becomes at the greener ripeness, sort of Sauvignon Blanc style sugars. It's quite a bland grape cultivar, and as a matter of fact, so bland that we create an MCC or Method Cup Classique champagne style, because that's what we're looking for. Is you want that yeast character, not too much cultivar. So that's a really early pick. And then we do our normal wooded Viognier. We pick at it pretty much where we're doing our red grapes, and that sort of really enhances, and it gives you that beautiful peach and apricot and pineapple and tangerine notes as well, and then of course the blossom as well, which is just a typical of Viognier.
So when I did a friend of ours she was getting, I think it was her 50th birthday, and she wanted to go to a Thai restaurant. And she said, what's the best wines that go with Thai food? And we did an extensive tasting in a Thai restaurant of all sorts of different food. It was absolutely wonderful. And but actually, tell you what really came out was white wine. Viognier smashed it, absolutely. And for the reds, Shiraz, and in fact, specifically a Chilean Shiraz, but we don't have. We're not doing a Chilean Shiraz, but what is it about the Viognier that makes it really go well with sort of spicy foods? Because it's got that sort of rich. The other tasting note I did about the Viognier is the oiliness. It on the mouthfeel, it sort of coats the inside of your mouth almost like with oiliness, and which I love. But what is it? I just wonder what it is about Viognier that does that.
Nessa, do you want to grab this one, or do you want me to?
Yeah, sure. So I always say that Viognier is a white wine for red wine drinkers, because I think it has a complexity and lots of layers of flavor as you taste through it. I think what people love about red wine is, when you sit with the red wine and just let it sit on your palate and let different layers of flavors develop. And Viognier has that. It has the mouthfeel and the texture that stands up really nicely with the wine, with a little bit of spice, or with lots of sort of, Thai is sort of all those combined flavors of lemongrass and coconut, and, obviously the chili spice. And Viognier just works really, really well with that. It levels, it balances up really nicely, and it also has a lovely length and finish to it, which sits really nicely. Again, something like a Sauvignon Blanc can be a little bit one-dimensional. You've got one flavor up front, and then it sort of dies away. Whereas Viognier, the beauty of Viognier is in the length and in the finish that you get. To get a good Viognier, that's what's wonderful. We also love putting it with any of the southern Mediterranean dishes we have down here. So we have things like octopus stew, which would have like flavors like tomato and garlic, and again a little bit of chili. So it'll sit really, really well with those kind of more complex flavors. So I think that's why it would have showed really nicely with the Thai food and the different varieties of things that you were tasting.
Do you do either of you do you where you plant Viognier, does altitude or sort of different vineyards? I absolutely buy into the sort of the terroir, the French sort of concept of terroir, which was the grape chooses where it's grown, because altitude or aspect or different soil types. But Viognier, is there anything about Viognier apart from whether you pick it early or late? Is there any sort of particular soil it likes or anything like that?
In our experience, we plant it where we plant our Syrah. They're sort of like brother and sister. They grow in the same way, so the vineyards kind of fall over the same way as the Syrah vines do. It's limestone soils, very stony. So they're actually AOC soils, appellation soils that we've declassified to plant the Viognier on. They're in the foothills of the mountains, so you get cool breezes in the evening, which really helps. And also we have the Orb River running alongside again, which brings some cool aspects to the grapes. A big difference between daytime and nighttime temperatures. So I don't know, Toyd, about where you've selected to.
Is that the same, Toyd? How do you split your vineyard? What do you grow? What do you plant where?
Yeah, very interesting with us. You know, with the pole warm temperatures, we like to ensure that if we look at the development of our whole farm, we've planted our red varieties and especially the Bordeaux's in a north-south direction, so that if the sun rises in the east, sets in the west, you're getting it sort of some good sunlight onto the bunches, and that sort of breaks down the green or the pyrazines on that. All our whites, the Sauvignon Blanc, we're planting in an opposite direction because you actually want the sun running along the spine of it and never having any sun baking on that. Viognier, funnily enough, is a white cultivar. We've planted in the same direction as the red varieties, which includes the Shiraz. Funnily enough, as well, our Viognier blocks are also flanked on all sides by Shiraz. Our soils are all decomposed granite soils, and it's just amazing how the berries and the thicker skins really sort of handle the warmer temperatures so well. And like I was saying, decomposed granite soils for us is also nice because it's slightly leaner soil, so you can really concentrate your fruit. The berries are tiny already, so you've already got that concentration. But we just see throughout our farm and throughout the cultivars, it's just a really nice soil to be able to do moisture management and be able to sort of stress to a degree to have tiny berries or as small as what you can have. So it's a fantastic cultivar to work with, y'all.
So Toyd, you I'm sorry, Nessa, you don't have one to listen to taste, but Toyd, you've got the Saint-Roch Viognier as well as your own Ridgeback Viognier. And now, so my sort of comparative tasting on this one is that and by the way, let's talk price as well, because that also has an effect. The Saint-Roch Viognier is about a £12 bottle, and the Ridgeback Viognier is about a £17 bottle. So the Ridgeback is a more expensive wine. But I think that comes through in sort of the elegance and the sort of the complexity of the thing. The Saint-Roch Viognier to me I think it is a really lovely, oily, upfront. Hang on, I have another slurp, just professional reasons, obviously. It's mouthful. It's really oily, and it's I could imagine sitting here with a red Thai curry. And that would go down absolutely brilliantly. And then I go to the Ridgeback one, and I find it's more elegant, it's more refined, and it's a classier wine, if I should say that. So it's got some, not quite so much oiliness, not quite so much upfront fruit, but it's more elegant. It's got more complexity, and it lasts a bit longer. So I would have that with still some sort of quite strong foods, but not necessarily with a Thai. I think it goes. And is there any oak aging in that?
Yeah. And our one, there definitely is. We do 10 months of big barrel 400 liter French oak barrels, and what we sort of the winemaking philosophy behind this one is also not keeping it on the skins for too long. We settle the clear juice for about 2 nights, and then we rack off the juice from the lees, and we take it down to barrel. And I love a bit of natural ferment on my Viognier. I feel it gives good complexity to the wine. But the thing with a natural ferment is, especially when you're working with slightly higher sugars, it's not going to give you that assurance of being able to ferment your wine to dryness. So we like to ferment naturally for about 2-3 days. It drops about 5 degrees Belling in that time, and then I inoculate with a commercial yeast suited to Viognier. So then I find you get that sort of beautiful elegance and the complexity of the natural, and you get the sort of the surety of the commercial yeast, and it just works so well. And then we age and barrel on the lees for 10 months, and then lightly filtered before bottling. But our whole concentration, our whole sort of thought behind the Viognier is we want slightly less of that perfumey aromatic we'd like the mouthfeel to really come through. And I'm sort of really enjoying the texture on that wine. And once you sort of have swallowed it, it really lingers, and it sort of really sort of coats your whole palate, which I'm very pleased that it's showing like this.
Can I interrupt? Mark, can I interrupt? I've got a few comments here. I've got one from Chris Ruffles saying, in future, Mark, can you please put China on your map, as we are one of the world's largest producers, and you are a stockist. So they also
that is true, but
Chardonnay blend.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely true. But I did download that wine, that map from the internet, and it wasn't showing up on. It wasn't my map, Chris. You're right. It should absolutely be there, but I'm afraid in the time scale it arrived, I couldn't make my own map up from the.
And I've got a couple more comments. David Mapp says that the Viognier, the French Viognier, seems to have a better varietal character.
Yes, it's got, yes. So if you think about a classic Viognier, it's got that peaches and apricots and that oiliness, and I think that's absolutely hits you in the face from the Domaine Saint-Roch, which I think is great. The thing about the Ridgeback one is that it's got those, but it is more complex. It's more subtle, shall we say? And it is, it's in complexity and let's say subtlety. I think it has it. So, and I think so. £12 versus £17. I think they're both absolutely spot on. If you see what I mean. If you were to take a Condrieu from that map of the Northern Rhone, that would be a £50, £60 bottle of wine. It would have even less varietal character than either of these two, but it would be a sort of a really rich but unfined wine. So it's not just the absolute upfront fruit that you're getting that determines its quality. But having said that, both of these wines I think are crackingly good wines.
Okay, so now I have a third question. Just to move on, what kind of dog does Nessa have? It's cute. This is from Gary and Patricia.
Nessa, you've got to unmute yourself.
And before she answers, we're going to show you our puppy at the end of the tasting, so don't go away.
Yeah, we got a new puppy. Okay, Nessa, what have you got?
He's a coton.
What?
He's a cotton from
Tulier or something.
No, they're from Madagascar. Tulier is a little town in Madagascar where the kings used to live, and they had gangs of these little. They're called cotton dogs because they don't have fur, they have hair.
Oh wow! Okay.
Which is like cotton, so they're really soft and they talk a lot.
They
don't listen. So
I also know that whilst Toit works for Ridgeback in South Africa, which is named after the Rhodesian Ridgeback, and you can see the dog in the background. Toit actually admitted, Rhodesian Ridgeback. Toit admitted that he's just got a new puppy, which is a bloody Labrador, and that's not online, is it?
These vineyard dogs are getting soft.
The owner had a definite look at my contract afterwards, and he brought in a new clause: no more other breeds, please.
Right, I'd like to move on to the reds now. So I'm suggesting if everybody can sort of sup up their whites and move on to the Syrah Shiraz. I will and again get a glass of each if that's okay, so we can compare and contrast. I'm just not this
Just an interesting note for everybody. Viognier loves oxygen, so these are wines that you can taste again tomorrow. Just see how they've evolved.
Okay, good point. Put the cork back in, put it in the fridge, and look at it tomorrow. If
like tomorrow.
It'll be interesting to know how many real wine customers let it last that long. Quite frankly, but there you go. We'll see.
Nessa, just a quick question for you. When you're talking about sort of oxygen as well, do you serve your Viognier slightly warmer, 16 degrees, 15, 16 degrees?
Yeah, we tend to sort of try and suggest that 15 to 16 rather than 12, if you know what I mean. Yeah. We've got different levels of Viognier. And, you know, some of our top ones we decant, etc. And I'd always say to people, you know, don't be afraid to leave it open for a day or two. Just really, it's just a grape that likes oxygen. Like you said, you do a barrel ferment and least stirring and all that kind of stuff. And it just loves all. If it's good quality Viognier, we find it just loves that kind of treatment.
Yeah, it doesn't want to be shy. You know, to sort of express itself and show.
Yeah.
And it needs oxygen and a bit of temperature for that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, which I really agree with, it's the texture, you know, that really comes through. It's that lovely mouthfeel.
I think one of the things I think I've learned over the course of years, not just the course of years, but also our sort of last 18 months of Zoom tastings, is that asking winemakers and producers the best temperature to drink wines at. I think we drink our white wines too cold and our red wines too warm. And, you know, so the classic thing is, we've got our fridge set. Our fridge is set at 4 or 5 degrees Celsius. And when the wine comes out of that, it's actually too cold. So certainly a Viognier or a Chardonnay is too cold at that temperature. So you let it warm up. But at least if it's too cold, you can let it warm up to the right temperature. Whereas, and room temperature for red wines, when the classic thing was said in the UK, it should be room temperature back in the 50s. Average room temperature in the 50s in the UK was, before central heating, was about 18 degrees. It's now about 23 degrees. And 18 is probably about right. 23 is absolutely too warm, isn't it, for red wine? It should be. So, and if you go to a really hot place and have a red wine, I ask for an ice bucket and I put my red wine in an ice bucket. And you know, take a little glass out every now and again and let it come to the right temperature. Otherwise, it can be far too hot. Now, I once, about 20, I can't even remember how many years ago, 20, even possibly 25 years ago, was asked to go to a Master of Wine Syrah Shiraz tasting. And we tasted 300 over the course of 2 days, 300 Syrah and Shirazes from around the world. And the question was, the New World says it's Shiraz or Syrah, as they say in Australia, and in the Rhone Valley it's Syrah. And is there a stylistic? It's the same cultivar, it's the same grape, but what's the difference? Is there a difference between a Barossa Valley or an Hermitage in the Northern Rhone? And we came. I having tasted over, I think it was about 300 different wines. I had a very firm view in my mind that there are two very different styles of Syrah stroke Shiraz, because it's the same grape variety. The Northern Rhone Syrah is quite sort of metallic, and it's got sort of good firmness. Then you go at the opposite extreme, you go to the Barossa Valley, where it's big and blousy and upfront and lovely and spicy. And I'm just wondering, now we come to taste one from the Saint-Chinian and one from Par, whether we'll see those differences from what are essentially the same grape varieties. Because Nessa, the Cote 136, and by the way, we tasted when we tasted before earlier in the year, we had at least 3 people saying that the Cote 136 was the best red wine they'd ever tasted. So that was good. And so there couldn't have been enough compliments for your wines from the last tasting, but nobody had tasted this one, because we hadn't had this one in between there. But yours is also a Shiraz, 84% Shiraz, 9% Grenache, 6% Mourvedre, and 1% Viognier. And Nessa, the Cote 136 says Syrah Grenache, but I don't know. Would you manage to sort of put a splash of Viognier? Because I think quite a few people do actually put a splash of Viognier in their red wine sometimes now.
Yeah, we do use Viognier, or if we don't have any Viognier as such, we often will. As Toit said, Viognier will be the last white grape to be harvested, and it's often harvested at similar times than the reds. And what we'll do is we won't necessarily put any Viognier juice in there, but we'll put some of the skins in. So we'll have a tank of Syrah, and then we'll put some Viognier skins in there, and then put some more Syrah on top, like a sandwich. And when you're fermenting the Syrah with Viognier skins, you tend to get a deeper color and a really sort of gorgeous floral aspect to it, like violets, you know, like that kind of Northern Rhone style Syrah to it. So we have been known to slip some Viognier skins into our tanks of Syrah for sure. On the blend.
I think that's a great idea. I think these. So to me, here we have the classic Cote de Rhone blend, and Cote de Rhone is, you know, but here we are in Saint Chinian. So it's the Syrah Grenache, and Toy, yours is the same. And I know that you're very much into, you plant the Rhone varieties as well as the Bordeaux varieties, and this is the Rhone variety. But I can encourage everybody to have a look at the differences in colour, because, you know, it's a new world, old world comparative tasting. I'm looking at both wines now. The Cote 136 is a 2018 vintage. So it's a younger than the African Ember, which is 2015. So there's 3 years difference. And if you you do the classic things, holding your glass down and look at the color through onto a white background, you can see that the sort of Nessa's wine from Laurent Miquel, you can see that purple edge. It's a younger wine, and Toit's has gone redder. And that's a classic aging process. A young red wine is purple. As it gets older, it goes redder, and then it goes older, it goes browner with time, and that's just what happens. But look how both. What I love about Syrah Grenache varietal blends or Syrah is that there's such a deep color. It's absolutely beautiful, rich color. And that to me it does. I mean, I could almost just sit here and look at the wines. I don't even need to taste them to get pleasure out of them. You know, there you go. But of course, I will taste them just for professional reasons. So I'm inclined to start with the younger wine first, Nessa. The Cote 136, yours is a. That's a single vineyard. So again,
single vineyard. So Cote 136 is just the number that the guys in the vineyard have given that particular plot. And then you'll see underneath the term Peche, says Arena. Peche is a little hill, basically. So that's the local Occitan name for that happy little hill that produces this wine. It's harvested a little bit earlier than sometimes we would do. In the Languedoc, we have a lot of sun, and the tendency can be to push maturity really, really far. With this wine, Laurent's sort of gone back to the more traditional French style of trying to create something with a bit more restraint. So he harvests a little earlier. It's about 20% Grenache, as we said, and there may be some Viognier skins in there. Don't quote me on that.
A little cheeky Viognier skin.
Yeah. Well, we have 40 hectares of Viognier, so we're the biggest owners of Viognier in the south of France, and it does tend to get into a lot of what we do. It's very much a signature. I'm
just looking at the label, which I've got to say, the detail of which I hadn't noticed before, but it does actually on the label say the latitude and the longitude. So it does say 43. So I got that right, because I picked that up off Google. So
there you go.
I didn't make a fool of myself.
And it does. We really feel with this wine, we're trying to show an expression, obviously, of the two grape varieties, but also as it's French tradition of a particular spot where we feel there's wonderful expression of these two grape varieties. All of our vineyards are surrounded by what we call the garrigue, and the garrigue is areas in our vineyards. Remember, we're up in the hillside, so a lot of the areas are inaccessible and cannot be planted. So back in the day when we were creating the vineyards, these areas stayed in their wild state or their bush state. So you've got wild thyme, wild rosemary, lavender, all these beautiful wild plants growing all around the small plots of vineyards. And because we get the wind coming across the mountains, the tramontane, which is the across the mountains wind, that'll bring the essences of these herbs and spices onto the skins of the grapes. When we macerate, then we infuse these wonderful flavors into the wine. So on the nose, you get very much that savory blend of herbs. So as I said, rosemary, thyme, lavender, certain flowers, and that gives a wonderful depth of flavor to the wine.
I think I think we should ask Toit to come in, because I'm going backwards and forwards again, and I'm enjoying both of these wines immensely, I've got to say. And there are only 2 of us here and 4 bottles tonight. We will possibly keep 2 of them back till tomorrow. But Toit, so your African Ember, which I think you used to call SBGM, so Shiraz, or something. You gave it a different name because it was the great varieties. But I think, and I noticed there's a gold medal and everything on there. But so this is a 2015 vintage, so it's older and it's coming through. And to me, I can, tasting myself between the two sides, I can feel that the Cote 136 is sort of a bit leaner and it's lovely, and your African Ember is a bit richer and fatter. So what do you think? Because you've got both there.
Well, Nessa, well done to you guys. Firstly, I think this is a stunning wine. If I'm looking at just a second on your one, I like the texture on it as well. You know, it's that really rich tannin, and it really is a quality wine. So well done to you guys and your team. I think it's fantastic. For us,
sorry, Toy,
yeah.
Can I just interrupt? I have a vote here for the French wine, saying that David Maffigan saying that it seems to have more body, intensity, and concentration. So I need to hear from people who think that the South African wine is their favourite. So carry on, Toit.
Thank you. So Rita and Mark. Okay, so the first thing for us with looking at Shiraz and New World style Shiraz, I think sometimes it's sort of been a little bit misconstrued as being a very ripe style of grape and sort of almost in a jammy style, if I can sort of say that in a very loose way, where for us, you know, we've focused on the cultivar itself and looking at not trying to make something out of something else. Shiraz is not a Bordeaux variety. Shiraz is a very thin-skinned variety. And in my opinion, it's a very elegant variety, and trying to sort of force that into sort of harvesting it too ripe, you end up getting a more jammy style, which is not what we want. We like the elegance on it, and we actually don't try and sort of make a bolder wine out of it. So restrained elegance is our thing. I like to harvest this. Our Shiraz comes in sort of the least ripe of any of our varieties, and I love sort of using a little bit of stalk in there as well. So as we mentioned before, it's pretty warm here, and we don't have that sort of long hang time that perhaps you guys have in France. So what we need to do is we bring it in. Shiraz is such a forgiving cultivar as well. It's not going to punish you with any bitter flavors that you might get from the Bordeaux. So we like to bring it in slightly less ripe, and then what we do is we actually add about 5% of the stalks. I add onto the mash, and what I like to get from there is a little bit of texture and freshness, and it just aids the structure of your wine as well. So I'm really enjoying sort of that part of it. And Shiraz for us, I mean, it's just a absolutely wonderful variety. It also handles temperatures so well. And you get such a wide variety of flavors, you know, from the sort of the peppers down at the earlier sugars, all the way right up to that beautiful sort of almost like a sour plum cultivar or character towards the riper spectrum. Lots of violets. It's just it's a stunning cultivar to work with.
You know,
we've got people. Mark, sorry, Mark. We've got people coming in, right, coming back and going for Ridgeback, saying it's rich, it's smooth, it's my type of wine. We've got some split. I think it's going 50-50 right down the middle.
I tell you, and I'm not a politician by any means, but what I am is I love wine, and I love food, and I love different wines with different food, and I'm guessing that my perfect meal. Oh God, hang on, perfect meal. I haven't even rehearsed this one. I want some Domaine Saint-Roch Viognier with my sort of Thai sort of spicy starter, and then maybe with some turbot in a cream sauce for my fish course with the Viognier from Ridgeback because it's a bit finer. And then I want a rack of lamb with the Cote 136. And then I want some cheese with the Ridgeback African Ember, and that's.
And then you need to be poured into bed at the end of that.
And I tell you what, that could be perfect. So you know,
can I also say, Mark, I have a question. Which wine would age longer,
Well, then I need to pass over to the winemakers because they will have sort of historical context on
And
that.
I have a question after that as well. So come back to me
Yeah,
after.
okay, yeah. Feel free to interrupt again.
I will.
Okay, so first of all, okay, because we started with the Cote younger one, the Cote 136 2018 vintage Nessa.
So aging potential. I mean, there's aging potential. Then what we think would be ideal. Ideally, I would give this wine 3 to 5 years.
I think ideal is what I think we're looking for, ideal rather than maximum.
Yeah. So 3 to 5 years, up to 10 years aging is fine. It's got beautiful natural acidity, which will allow it to age really, really nicely. And you move into more of the secondary characteristics, a little bit of leather and.
So when you say 3 to 5 years, that's
fruit will smoothen out a bit to more of those secondary characteristics.
It's 3 to 5 years from vintage or from now?
From now, yeah, from now.
From now, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's tasting really nicely now, and I think in a lot of ways people are interested in trying wines that have that beautiful fruit intensity, but don't need to be aged, another 10 years to
yeah.
But I think give it 3 to 5 years and it'll show really, really well.
What about you? What do you with the African Ember?
Yeah, we've got a bit of a policy where we like to bottle age for about 2 to 3 years before releasing it to market, even if it means we hold back some of our wine a little bit, because we don't want to tell people what it's going to be like. We want people to sort of already start to see the potential of the wine when they're buying it. So I agree with Nessa as well. For us, it would be 5 years would be optimal drinking, but maturing up 10 to 12 years, no problem at all.
Okay, so I have a second question here for both of you. How does the heat and strength of the sun affect production of both of these wines? Heat and strength of the sun.
Nessa, can I grab this one?
No,
yeah,
can I come in before you come into that? Let me say something, if that's all right, because I know I've got the two experts, but I've got my own view on this. I used to, when I was working for a previous company, we were talking about the effect of antioxidants in red wines, and it's the effect of the sun's rays. So when the vines grow, when in the vineyards, in certain areas where it's too hot, you leave the canopy of the leaves on top of the grapes to stop the sun hitting the grapes too much, because it could be too intense. But actually, in the northern regions where there's not so much sunlight, you defoliage, if that's a word. You take the leaves away, and because you want more sunshine hitting the grapes, and the more sunshine that hits the red grapes, the more red pigmentation you get. More red pigmentation you get, the more antioxidants there are, which is arguably a health thing. So yes, drink a glass of red wine, a bottle of red wine every day for the health of your body. But
not your kidneys though, or your liver.
No, it's your liver. I think you're not your kidneys.
Your liver, sorry.
And hey, don't you worry about kidneys. Use it or lose it, I say. The concentration of into the skins gives you flavor. So this again, comes back to the original question. What is the effect of sunshine on? So good sunshine it ripens ripens red grapes, and gives you concentration of color of the skins, which is, I'm guessing, is a good thing. I don't know.
Can I just say that because of what you've just said, Mark, David Matt has already said on the chat about the difference between wine. He says the French feels like a hot climate, whilst the fresher style of the South African suggests cooler climate. So what do you think about that?
Well, I personally, I think it's the other way around, but then yeah, that's personal taste. Come on, Toit, talk to me about sunshine on grapes.
Well, Mark, you've said it all. I don't know what much. There's not much more. If I could just viticulture is my passion, and that's where I started as well. So just to mention, and just perhaps a couple of manipulations that we do to work with sunshine, because you're absolutely so fortunate if you have enough of that, because it does enhance flavor. But you also need to be careful of not having too much. So a couple of things. Row direction is one. If you have red varieties, for example, the Bordeaux, you would like to plant it north-south, so that you have that sunlight in the morning and sunlight in the afternoon. You mentioned breaking out foliage. We do that in the bunch zone. It's about a 20 centimeter gap that we break out all the leaves on the morning sun side. The morning sun is less intense than the afternoon sun and less heat, so you have less chance of sunburn, which is definitely what you do not want on any of your grapes. So in effect, it gets that beautiful sort of sun filtering in the morning, breaking down of pyrazines, enhancing flavors, enhancing all the components, the positive components. And then in the afternoon, when it's sort of at its peak and at its hottest, you've got the leaves shading it on the afternoon sun side. So that's one thing. The second thing is to remember is sunburn is reflected from the bottom. It's not necessarily directly from the sun. So what we've done also is we've lifted our cordons or our arms where our grapes hang. Standard practice here would be anything from about 0.5 meter to 800 millimeters. We've raised ours up to about 1 meter. So that already gives us a little bit more air movement through underneath the bunches. It cools down the whole process. And we find it really works well for productivity as well. So very blessed always to have sunlight, but it's just the way that you work with it that sort of can really be a benefit if you follow the right steps.
I just love, it's such a privilege. I mean, I love drinking wine, and I've done nothing but drink and taste wine ever since I've left university. But to talk to these experts online is fantastic. Now, Nessa, what about you? What about your canopy management?
Yeah, that's really, really interesting to listen to the way that Toyd and his team have adapted to their particular terroir and their particular climate. I think it's a big challenge for us, for all of us winemakers, wherever we are in the world, but where we are in areas with high sun exposure. So again, we've got a Mediterranean climate, we've got a lot of sun, more than enough sun. And traditionally, when people think about France, they think about good vintages and bad vintages. And back in the day, that was literally enough sunshine to ripen in places like Bordeaux and Burgundy. And of course, we're facing a change in the way that the climate is acting. And in the Languedoc, we've had to face up to that for the last 30 years. So adapting exactly like they have in South Africa to our culture to high levels of sun exposure being our friend and our enemy, and that it's what creates, as you very well explained, the flavor and arguably the health benefits of the red wine. But too much and you're getting overexposed, you're getting wines that are too high in alcohol, jammy, and just not, as they say in French, palatable, not balanced. So we, again, with the north-south planting and the canopy management, strive to make sure that the grapes get enough sun at the right times when the sun is gentler and will ripen and keep nice natural acidity in the wines. But then when there's a risk of overexposure, they're protected by the canopy. So we're doing, similar acts in the vineyard. We've also created a lake in our vineyard. So that we collect our water in the winter. We harvest water in the winter time, and then we use drip irrigation throughout the season to allow water to go down. We've got limestone soil, so very good drainage. But when the vines have struggled really deep down in the soils, they do find water there. And especially with Syrah, where we've seen a lot of mortality in the Languedoc, it's important to harvest water in the winter and use it throughout the season. So I think the winemakers and the estates that will win out in the future decades are the ones that will harness nature and work with it to create wines, rather than trying to fight against, which is
for sure.
battle.
I know it's nearly 8 o'clock. Well, it is just on 8 o'clock, but is there any chance that we can have a little chat about 15% versus 13.5% on wines? Or is that too big a subject?
Hang on, on what basis? That we haven't had a 15% wine here tonight?
No.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Alcohol on wine. I'll give you my view, because I have a view, clearly. I think that, and I'm coming from a basis that I'm not a wine producer, I'm a wine consumer, and I love wine, and I want the best of wine. But my understanding is that if you want to get the best ripeness out of your wine, you've got to label it, you've got to ripen it as much as you can for the flavors, and sugar levels and flavors don't ripen at the same time, at the same speed. So if you want to, sometimes if you want to get the most flavor out of a wine, it's got to ripen longer, and you get more sugar, which therefore means it feels like it will have more alcohol. So you're not actually looking for more alcohol, you're looking for more flavor and character. A byproduct of that is more alcohol. So it may well be that a wine is 15%, but it tastes like a 13.5% wine because it's in good balance. And I think that is your challenge as winemakers. Our challenge as wine drinkers is to drink it and enjoy it. Your challenge as winemakers is to make it so that it tastes good, and I don't envy you that task, that's for sure. So is one of these wines 15% already?
Yeah,
Yes,
the Cote.
Okay, it is already. Okay, the Cote 136 is 15%. It's probably more than that, actually, and that's probably what you're labeling. It's probably might even be more than that. Who knows? So Toit, tell us, do you have to sometimes hold back on the alcohol?
I think, as I mentioned just now, Shiraz is such a forgiving cultivar that we don't, there's for us or on our farm, we just find that there's no risk of sort of harvesting it slightly less ripe. It just gives you more complexity. It gives you a little bit more of that pepper spice. It gives you a little bit sort of more bright red fruit. Whereas if it was a Bordeaux cultivar, we would also tend towards 14.5%, because you've got more risk of bitterness, of green tannins, which you just never find in Shiraz. So my Shiraz, I usually try and peg at about 13.5 to 14%. I just feel it gives us good elegance, and there's enough body in this wine and ripe tannin, and especially sort of adding back a little bit of that stalk gives you that freshness as well. So I don't feel it lacks anything. I'm very happy with the wine is balanced.
I agree. I don't think any wine we've tasted tonight lacks anything at all.
If I could just comment quickly on Nessa's as well, it's just interesting at the higher alcohol, this wine is still balanced. So it's a beautiful package. So it's interesting, the spectrum that you can operate in and still have a beautifully balanced product.
I'll tell you what, on that point, I have absolutely no doubt that we've had wines of 12% the pack flavor. You've had wines that you think, oh my God, it's 15.5% alcohol. You think it's nothing. It's the alcohol level is all part of the balance of a wine. The alcohol level on its own doesn't tell you anything. It's all to do with whether it's a well-balanced wine. And I didn't realize, and tasting it, the 136 you don't realize it's 15% alcohol, and I bet it's that's probably what you're labeling it. I wouldn't even be surprised if it's a bit more than that, quite frankly, but you don't have to comment on that.
Actually, I'd say on that one we're slightly, we're probably a little bit under the 15, but okay. It's not, I would say, typical of our reds. Our reds are typically between 13, 14.5 would be pushing it, but that's also vintage.
Yeah, and the point is the alcohol level. For me, the alcohol level is not the issue. The issue is it a well-balanced wine?
Exactly.
And does it taste well? And sometimes a well-balanced wine is great at 12%, and sometimes it's great at 15%. And the point is,
but I think ideally as a winemaker, you would probably, if it was a blend from around the vineyards, we would blend this with something a little bit less high in alcohol. But remember, this is a single vineyard, so this is how this particular vine.
Yeah, it is what it is.
It is what it is. Exactly. Yeah. And I surprised myself actually the first time I tasted this wine. Somebody else pointed out it was 15, and I was like, oh geez, because it's got that freshness. It's kind of surprising. But as I said, single vineyard, so it is what it is. We'll see what next year's
exactly.
I
I think you know what? Much as I personally would like to go on for another hour.
Shall I just go and get the puppy?
Rita, go and get the puppy. Go and get the puppy to show everybody who our puppy is. In the meantime, so I'm going to say thank you, Nessa and Todd. Thank you so much. You know, I've loved it. I really actually wish we could do this every Friday night, because this is just what I want to do. I'm going to sort of try, if I can try and unmute everybody. And oh God, you know, I'm really not very good at this.
My daughter wants to see the puppy.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm going to ask everybody to unmute, because we're going to see our puppy, and please unmute yourselves if you can.
You want more of the South Africans this one?
This is Honey, our new puppy.
Oh, is that puppy?
Yeah.
9 weeks old.
She's only 9 weeks old. She's just woken up. But
That's it. We're going to leave. We've seen the
like
puppy.
Shiraz. She definitely likes Shiraz. Come on then.
Right, that's it. That's all you get.
She says she's called Shiraz.
Well, she should be called Shiraz.
Hey, look, guys, thank you so much. I'm going to thank you. I'm going to go to gallery view.
Oh, can we see Cote?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Any more puppies? Any more?
No more puppies.
Yes. Yes.
Behind you. Oh, there we go.
Anyway, guys.
Oh, another one. Wait.
Thank you very much.
How many more times?
Good evening.
Thank you, Mark. That was great.
They're good fun. Look, get to your food. Spatchcock chicken.
Oh yeah.
And Andrew. Hey, Andrew.
Good boy.
Sorted out, Andrew. In your allotment.
It's a cat. There's a cat.
Well, kill.
There's a pussycat. Can you see the pussycat? Where's he gone?
Where's the Labrador?
Quick, go and buy a pet.
My screen's gone funny. Anyway, look, everybody, thank you so much.
Too much alcohol.
It's been a lovely Friday night. Thank you very much.
See you next month.
For those of you who are coming, we'll see you next month for another such tasting.
November.
And
Yeah, November.
great pleasure.
Thanks, Toy.
See you, Mark. See you, Rita.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Enjoy your spatchcock chicken and your gorgonzola and vegetable.
Yeah.
That's what we're eating tonight, Andrew. Put it.
Be good. Bye. Bye.